Hello. Today I'm going to do a little more reading from the Talmud Jmmanuel introductory explanation. Today I'm going to read from a part covering Buddhism and Siddhartha Gautama, also known as Buddha. Buddhism, along with Christianity and Islam. Buddhism is a world religion which is not limited to a single people as Judaism is. This religion leads back to the Indian Siddhartha Gautama. He lived between 560 and 480 before Emmanuel. Consequently, the naming of the religion as Buddhism is wrong, because fundamentally, as with any religion or other sect, the name of the god or founder is determining for this. Accordingly, the religion would have to be called Gautamaism, and the followers Gautamaists. The designation Buddha does not, in fact, correspond to a god. Rather, it concerns an honorary title derived from Sanskrit, which means the awakened to the highest truth, or awakened to the true reality. Another epithet of Gautama was Shakyamuni, which means the sage of the Sakya clan, the clan to which the family of Gautama belonged. These were not clerics or Brahmins, but warriors and nobles. Kshatriyas. The Shakyas were regents of a principality in the area of today's southern Nepal, which forms the joint between the Himalayas, the gateway to Central and East Asia, to India, and the gateway to Southeast Asia, as well as to Ceylon or Sri Lanka and to Indonesia. The later dissemination areas of Gautamism or Buddhism were in this area. Gautamism or Buddhism, in its origination, precedes Allahism, Islam, and Christianity by several centuries, because it came into being between 560 and 480 before Emmanuel. Gautamism, Buddhism, is developed into the predominant religion, particularly in China and Tibet, in Indochina, Japan, and Korea, as well as in Indonesia, namely in varying markedness. A lasting influence on religious movements also occurred in Europe and in North America. In the 12th century, the Gautama religion was ousted from India, but then it experienced a renaissance in its motherland. In contrast to other world religions, Gautamism, Buddhism, knows no creator God, who stands as the highest might over the human being, and to whom the human being must submit him or herself in his or her salvation. The liberation of the human being from all fetters of existence on the eightfold path to nirvana is the focus. Gautamism, Buddhism, is, in this respect, a form of esotericism, because a determinative orientation is included in it with regard to overcoming earthly existence. Fundamentally, Gautamism, Buddhism, originated as a monastic order and is represented to this day by monks. After the first council of Vaishali in the 4th century before Emmanuel, the religion, which had become widespread throughout East Asia, would come to an end in India in the 12th, 13th century due to the Islamic rule. Although Siddhartha Gautama did not see himself as a prophet or religion founder, he went into the history of the world religions as a religion founder, but erroneously as Buddha. He was a traveling preacher who formed the type of the teachers in the long series of Gautamist Buddhist leading figures. Gautamism, Buddhism, occupies a special position within the 5 world religions because it does not know, accept, or share a creator God, or a personal core eternal soul. The so-called belief in the soul is regarded as a primary fetter, which is to be dissolved on the path of the noble ones for the final liberation steps. Only through this is the human being supposed to become the true human being, or the Arya. I hope I pronounced that right. Arya, that is the noble one. And once again, it is to be explained that Gautama did not consider himself to be a prophet or the son of a god, as this is ludicrously imputed in a defamatory manner to Emmanuel as Jesus Christ by the Christian religion. Gautama saw himself as a normal but fully awakened human being, showing the other human beings the inner path to awakening so that they become true human beings. So Gautamism, Buddhism comes close, at least with regard to these factors, to the teaching of the prophets. But this does not mean that all of that which his followers have erroneously interpreted from his teaching in a wrong manner since Gautama's death, until the present time, can be accepted as effective truth. Equally, as with Emmanuel and Mohammed, an enormous number of things have been misinterpreted and made into senseless teachings by the followers, believers, and scribblers. As with Emmanuel and Mohammed, the falsifications led to irrational teachings, which, especially in Christianity and Allahism, Islam, led to bloody and murderous wars, as well as to just such proselytizing. Hinduism. The term Hinduism is a collective designation for various religious movements, which have originated in India from the ancient Vedic religion. The term first came into being in its present use as the name of a world religion in the 19th century. It actually concerns a designation formed by the Western religions and social sciences for the traditional religious and social structures and institutions of the Indians. As with Judaism, where the name of the land of Judah was and is used for the designation of the land's inhabitants as Jews, and later for the religion, even Judaism, so it behaves similarly with Hinduism. For the religion's name arose from the designation of the inhabitants of the Indian land as Hindu. Hinduism arose from the fusion of the Vedic religion of Aryan or Indo-European immigrants with the non-Aryan religions. Everything was continuously influenced and expanded by the forms of belief of new immigrants and by neighboring peoples. The self-designation of the Indians for their religion is Sanatana Dharma, which means eternal religion according to Sanskrit. In the Indian understanding, it has always existed and is announced over and over again across all times by saints, as well as by seers or rishis, and by others. In contrast to other major religions, Hinduism has no religion founder, as well as no common binding confession of faith. as well as no individual conversions, at least not in theory. The recognition of the Vedas, that is, the oldest collection of religious literature, Veda or Veda equals Sanskrit, equals knowledge, is common to all Hindus. The earliest known writings come from the time prior to the 1st century before Emmanuel. The origins of Hinduism can be traced back to the Vedic culture in the 2nd century before Emmanuel. In the 1st century before Emmanuel, the Vedic religion mixed with indigenous Dravidian religions to Brahmanism, early Hinduism, which Vishnuism and Shivaism followed. As a religion that has grown over thousands of years, Hinduism knows not one, but many religion founders. Consequently, the term Hinduism, as said before, solely relates to the Hindus as inhabitants of the land. Fundamentally responsible for this religion are a very large number of mystic seers and sages, as well as founders of philosophical schools, religious movements, and reform movements, which have created the actual causes for it. The term Hinduism is, as mentioned before, based on the designation Hindu, which applies to those inhabitants of India who, from an Islamic perspective, do not belong to Christianity or to Yahwism, Judaism, or to Allahism, Islam. Today, 2011, the Hindu religious communities have about 900 million followers who primarily live in peninsular India, in Ceylon, or Sri Lanka, and on Bali. Many Hindus are also to be found in the South Pacific, the Caribbean, and in Africa, as well as in the United States of America and in Europe, particularly in Great Britain. Well-known Hindu communities have come into being, where England in particular must be emphasized, as this was a former colonial power in India, by which many Hindus relocated into the United Kingdom of Great Britain. Common to nearly all Hindu movements is the teaching of the cycle of rebirths as human beings or animals, where even the gods are subjected to the samsara. The form of the rebirths lines up according to the good or bad karma acquired in life, and thus, according to the fulfillment of duties, the Dharma. Dharma stands in close connection with casteism or casteism. If the human being finds redemption, then he or she separates from the cycle of rebirths, the path to this being asceticism and meditation, which in yoga lead to our higher consciousness, as well as to love for God, bhakti, including a wide variety of rites and ceremonies. Hinduism is distinguished from all other religions by its multi-god world, for it's based on a manifold polytheism, which has no equal in any other polytheistic religion. A personification forms the starting point. Vishnu, with his 10 incarnations, including Krishna, Rama, and Shiva, have priority over Vedic gods like Agni, the god of fire and sacrifice, as well as Indra, the god of the sky and war. The Hindu gods are ambivalent, and so Shiva is destructive and at the same time beneficent. Emmanuel's nailing to a stake and the guilty ones. According to the Arhat level, Emmanuel was not crucified, but was nailed to a Y-shaped tree trunk. And the guilty ones in relation to Emmanuel's staking are exclusively the Pharisees, Sadducees, high priests, the Sanhedrin and Judas Ischkerioth, as well as his fanatical, hate-filled father, the Pharisee Simeon Iscariot. The people of the God believers, the Jewish people, were not involved in it, but rather only two small groups, which were mobilized fanatically and with hatred against Emmanuel by the Pharisee Simeon Iscariot, in which he had bribed, so that they testified against Emmanuel in an accusatory manner. The Jewish people, nation of that time, therefore, had no influence at all on the sentencing of Emmanuel. Quite the contrary. It was on Emmanuel's side. Consequently, his teaching was followed by many. So it was then, as it is always, that the cult bigwigs exerted great power and went forward with murder against all those who were against their sordid and wrong as well as seductive machinations. Already at that time, as well as before, the people were led into confusion, exploited, and misused by the cult mighty for dark and criminal purposes, as is the case even today. In particular, by the religious sectarian and murderous terrorism of confusingly led cult believers or God believers, as they were called by Emmanuel. Explanations about Isa Rashid. He was the man who transcribed the original scrolls into German. In Volume 1 of the Pleiadian Contact Reports, pages 57 to 58, in the 7th contact of the 25th of February, 1975, 6:02 p.m., an explanation of Samyases is found regarding a certain M. Rashid, sentences 25 to 43. For human beings who have not yet dealt extensively with the contact reports, her words allow the conclusion that Rashid, who in reality wanted to be called just Isa, and not by his first name, Marcus, was contacted by the Pleiadian directly, so not only through impulses. This was, however, not the case because Samyase meant by one of our contact people that Isa Rashid was contacted by them, the Pleiadian, through impulses. She explained the following at that time, which I now turn in the right direction with regard to the correctness of the history, with notes inserted in parentheses. Samyase. First, I would like to answer your question, which you asked me last time. M. Rashid, note from Billy. His full name was Marcus Isa Rashid, but he called himself only Isa Rashid, was one of our contact people since 1956. Note from Billy. These were only impulse contacts. As you do know, he was a priest. Note from Billy, lay priest, of the Greek Orthodox Catholic Church. We entrusted him, note from Billy, through impulses, to take various things in hand, which he also promised us to do. Note from Billy. According to Ptah's statement, he simply let himself be led by the impulses. Therefore, we thought that he was the right man to solve a very difficult task. Consequently, we showed him the place where he could have found the Talmud Jmmanuel, but which you then found, that original script from Judas Ischkerioth had written in the lifetime of Emmanuel. Note from Billy, alias Jesus Christ. Through our impulse help, he learned Old Aramaic and was able to translate the scripts. He did this very correctly and produced a German language translation which is, indeed, known to you. Through the reading of the original scripts, M. Rashid succumbed to pangs of conscience and suddenly no longer knew what he should acknowledge as truth. Outwardly, he proclaimed the feigned conviction that he would be faithful to the Talmud, but in reality, religion was too deeply rooted in him, and he suffered from pangs of conscience. This, then, was also the reason that he officially withdrew from his religious belief. Note from Billy from his office of lay priest, and devoted himself only to the task of translating the named script, which he did very correctly in spite of everything. Note from Billy. Unfortunately, it turned out that Semyase assessed the whole thing incorrectly. She did not have command of the Aramaic language and assumed that Isa Rashid's translation was correct. Unfortunately, she did not let his work be checked, because this only happened much later when the book Talmud Jmmanuel was already in circulation. But this was a good thing, as it turned out later. An explanation about this from the Pleiaren Patah still follows, but as I said, he was not convinced and never knew what he should do. To this end, he lived in constant anxiety that his scripts, which he found, could be discovered and could become known. So as a precaution, we had to bring him into connection with someone who knew no anxiety and who ensured us, by his character and his knowledge, that he could secure the scripts. So therefore you. But unfortunately, Rashid became ever more entangled in his anxiety, and he began to divulge things which could become dangerous to him and the Talmud. He took it so far that, by the middle of 1974, he had no other choice than to flee from Jerusalem and to settle in Lebanon, where he lived in a refugee camp under a false name, together with his family. But he then also had to flee again from there and left the country. His anxiety, however, was to blame for the fact that he enclosed all the scripts in a wooden wall, where they were totally destroyed only a few hours later by a fire, when the Israeli military invaded. Thus, everything was destroyed, for which he is to blame. But actually, we are also to blame for this because we trusted him too much and expected too much of him, whereby the most valuable evidence could be destroyed, which could have one day revealed the untruthfulness of the Christian sect and all other sects and religions associated with it. But there still exists a good 0.25% of the script in the German version, and it will also be adequate to bring the truth to light and to free the human beings from a deadly delusion. Note from Billy. She speaks of the quarter part of the translation, which Isa Rashid sent to me. The Pleiaren secured this quarter part of the entire scroll in the original and have it in their possession because they always took the parts which Isa Rashid translated and had allowed to be converted into the German language by Prince Raja D. Polatsky. Isa Rashid spoke only a little German. Consequently, he had to translate his translations into the Arabic and English languages, as well as a little into the German language, as Prince Raja D. Polatsky had not mastered Aramaic, but only these languages. But now the present translation is based on the work of Pleiaren, who are well versed in the scripts, as well as on the very important collaboration of the pure spirit level Arahat Athersada. Consequently, an absolutely correct translation work now exists as the new Talmud Jmmanuel.